Welcome back to MCOC AlBundyRules. So what I have here is a new YellowJacket buff tutorial. But before we start the actual tutorial, let's see a little bit on what he does. He is not an overly strong damage dealer, so some are already disregarding this buff. However, he has some very nice utility. One thing here he has that I really like is the slow function, which makes him a great counter for Thing, as we're going to see right here on this quick little highlight. And I'll get a little bit more into how to use these functions effectively as we actually get into the tutorial, just showing a little bit of what he can do. So we see can make a great counter for any of those with the unstoppables, including Thing. We will see here he also has reverse regeneration abilities we're going to see in this fight. And we see how that regeneration is going backwards there, which is nice. YellowJacket can also make a good evade counter. I'm going to get a little into this video. One of my favorite features on him, though, is his Indefinite Power Sting. I'm going to show how to use that. But watch the Power Sting. So all I really have to do here, activate this, and just keep baiting specials. It's pretty much that simple. Just give enough power, bait back, and just let the defender pretty much Power Sting themselves to knockout. Nice and easy. This way too makes YellowJacket pretty dang suicide friendly as well, because I can let them just do all the real damage to themselves without even activating the specials at this part. At least no specials that would actually cost me health. Let's get into the tutorial. We're going to start with Nuclear Core, which is always active. We see starting point from 40 to 100. We'll see I'll have that higher at times because of these synergies right here. You get 10 plus synergy. You'll see it activate at different parts of the videos because I'll use different synergy teams at times. We see the Nuclear Core that is active. We see how the potency there. We see you can either hit 60% chance or a special attack. Every time they launch a special attack, it goes up 10. You usually, depending on what you're trying to do, you usually want to keep this from activating. So 100 or 120 based on synergies. You can start launching heavies in order to lower it down. It's very similar to control of Punisher 99 battery charge, for example. So in order to keep it from the core from activating, just do some heavies that also activates the Unstoppable from a synergy with himself. So don't think you need an actual teammate for that synergy. It's his own synergy. And we see once it hits that, it goes into Nuclear Core Meltdown. So let's speak a little bit about Meltdown. That's when it turned yellow up there. So it's going to give some much bigger burst physical damage. This includes any contact. So you will see if they hit me, or even if I block or parry their hit. You see that damage right there? I parried it. He took 1,200 damage from when I parried him when this is active. So that's a pretty nice thing right there. It's one of my favorite parts of Meltdown. They can just do damage to themselves just by simple me either getting hit, getting parried. Me parrying them, or taking any blocks, anything like that. So again, we'll see the Meltdown activate. Again, it will activate between 100 to 120. It will at least be available to activate. Those synergies extended to each synergy up to 10 each that I showed a little bit ago. And we see when the timer goes down, it drops back down to 40, but since I had a synergy active, it dropped back down to 50 there. So like I said, this is a synergy with himself that automatically activates on the synergies there. So that allows for the heavies to not only take off 10 of the cores when you're trying to manage that, but also allows you to do an unstoppable. So that's great for evade counters like that Spider-Man I just showed you, because they can't ignores evade, which is awesome. So that makes him a great fight, a great use for those. And it also makes it to where he doesn't activate the Unstoppable. So we'll see that being demonstrated pretty well here on the Thing fight. But other fights that make the Unstoppable more tricky, maybe Juggernaut and Isla, some of those other ones, this now becomes a pretty dang good counter for those fights. So although YellowJacket does lack some raw damage potential, which automatically gets people start screaming horrible buff, not necessarily true. So here we can between a combination of his nuclear cores, again, that counts up. Each amount on there increases 1% decrease on the regeneration. Then you combine that with the S2 and the petrify that comes from that, and there you go, boom, you just reversed healing. So you really want to manage the count on the cores from there. You really want to try to keep it from activating to get the best right on your regeneration or reverse as possible. But again, you need that petrify too. So when you see they're getting ready to do the regeneration, activate that petrify with an S2. Have your count up decently, kind of control the count if you need to, and you will see right there, you see the regeneration's active, but only red's coming up. He ain't healing. So that is a very positive thing. Not a whole lot of champs in the game can reverse healing, so having this ability for YellowJacket gives him major value right there in that in itself. So again, those who aren't overly excited about this need to really look at his overall abilities on some of the good utility and more rare utility on some of it. Another really interesting one is unblockable special. So I purposely took a S1 there. You would have seen those cores go down 10 per hit. Now watch when Doom's hitting me. And this is a max R3 6-star Doom hitting me. And he ain't been doing barely any damage, except for if it does crit, it does a little damage, but the non-crits are doing like 70 damage. It's actually kind of hilarious. So that is a very nice feature right there. If you take an unblockable hit, it reduces their attack by 75%, so it can become a tank. Be aware of that too if you have a trouble fighting him. Now, he might be a pretty dang good defender with some of these capabilities. If you fight a Mystic, the debuff is activated once it's launched instead of when it hits. Here we have the special one. Getting to these specials, we'll see signature ability gives a little bit extra. But I didn't seem like the signature ability was working. It might be bugged, I'm not positive, but it does get this power sting on the special too. You get petrify for 15 seconds, which reduces power gain and regeneration, and based on the signature, can also give 5 core charges when the petrify ends. So nice little positive. So really the signature ability is definitely not needed. Just kind of adds a little bit to his specials in one way or the other. But it is really good for the S3. S3 is a big part for getting damage, so I am going to show that soon. The S2 here is key in reverse and regeneration. So if you got a regeneration fighter, be aware of how to do this. I'm going to cover this a little bit more in the tips section because it is one of his best features in my opinion, based on how few champions can actually do this. Special 3 is a key to getting a lot of damage with him, which is great, but makes him suicide friendly because you don't take recoil damage. So the special 3 on signature ability, 100% chance to reapply itself once activated. It goes by sig. So if you have lower sig ability, then it might expire. I have a pretty high sig. I've duped him so many times over the years. So it's indefinite. The S3 does an indefinite power sting. Based on your signature ability, it's going to keep reactivating. Meaning, so all I really have to do is let him keep attacking himself by keep doing those specials. And I showed a little clip of that at the beginning of the video, and I will show more on how to really use this. But in the meantime, we do see what the S3 does. It does some damage. It gives that indefinite power sting, which again can keep reactivating itself. And you see each time they do a special, when power sting is active, they give themselves damage. And yes, he will do less power sting damage than, say, Spider-Ham, which is crazy damage. Unlike Spider-Ham, this can stay indefinite. I mean, you can lock it into where it keeps reactivating over and over and over and over for long periods of time, which is always a nice positive thing. And you see it reactivated there without any doing on my part. So tip 1, get high core count and use this to reverse regeneration for those regeneration fights for champs that have regeneration or those different nodes. There's a lot of nodes out there that give regeneration. Use that to your advantage with this ability. So we see the abilities going on there. And once it reactivates again, we'll see some decent damage. Not great, but decent. But his big ability is letting them do damage to themselves with the power sting when used correctly. And of course, damage to themselves when reversing regeneration. So that's really where he kicks in. If you just look at his basic attack numbers, you won't be impressed. If you look at the damage he can do through these other methods, then it gets much better as you go. Still not an OP attacker, but has some very good uses to him. Use heavies to apply slow. This makes them a great counter. I've done videos on champs with slow before. I really enjoy that. It's one of my favorite debuffs actually, because it's a great counter for some of the more trickier fights. Really, the unstoppables and the evaders. That's an automatic counter to them, and those are almost most of all the tricky fights in the game. To include either through nodes or through the actual champ. So any champ attacker that has slow, I'm automatically happy with, because I can make things much easier on the utility side. So when you factor in his slow evade counter, unstoppable counter, and reverse regeneration, great purposes. And we will see slow again to where it will ignore evades right there when the slow is active. Tip 3 is using S3 which reapplies, but based on SIG. So the higher the SIG, if you have a max SIG, it's 100% reapplies. So I'm going to let a nice, decent clip going on and how much damage we can let them do to themselves here, factoring this into the damage. So I just did an S3. That does the Indefinite S3 power sting. So you see the power sting? She just did some 15,000 damage to herself. So now I'm just going to try to keep the power up to where they keep doing specials. I'm going to bait specials. I want to make it to where I can keep having her do S1s, because now each time she launches, 15,000 power sting right there. Again, I'm going to bait again, get her up to an S1. I bait again, she says 17,000 damage to herself. I'm going to get her to S1 again. I'm going to bait again, and boom. You see what I'm saying here? I just had her do, I'm getting her to do close to 100,000 damage to herself just by baiting specials right here. Very simple. So for some of the higher health fights, some of the fights to where you just more aggressive, very useful. Another almost 13,000 right there. Like I said, this can get to the point based on SIG where it might stop applying itself and you see it just went away because this is not a max SIG. No problem. Great for suicides, because now all I have to do is launch another S3. No recoil damage with suicides, and guess what? I get to do all that again, everything I just did, to where I can just let her keep taking off her own damage through the power sting. So that is definitely something I think some are overlooking, which gives him a lot more bang for his buck. Again, 18,000 power sting, it's still active. And like I said, signature is by almost 20,000 there. Signature Awaken is by far not necessary to make this a pretty decent champ, but to get this better damage from the S3s, it absolutely will help here. As we see, especially for these longer high health pool fights, makes a big difference. Might not be as needed on shorter fights. High health pool fights, yeah, it absolutely makes a difference. And again, we still see that power sting. How many power stings have I got off of 2 S3s in that clip? I lost track, but quite a bit. So I hope this helped you with this pretty dang good buff overall. I enjoyed it overall. Has some great uses, can definitely use in a lot of content. Don't forget to click that top left little icon up there and subscribe to MCOC AlBundyRules.